Pre-election preparations for the 2024 elections. The winner by a landslide. I recently put out some episodes and had you guys vote to which one I would record first. The other ones may or may not get recorded. But this one was the winner. Pre-election preparedness. And it kind of saddens me that that's a thing in America now, but I think that it is actually not paranoid. It's pretty germane to look back at the last election and think that there may be some serious issues in, around, following, adjacent to the 2024 elections. With that, I'm going to put this out, since I threw this out to the patrons, I'm going to put this out to the patrons soon, and I'm recording this in the month of May in the year of our Lord 2024. I plan on putting it out much later to the general public, the general audience. That way the patrons get, a lot more time to think about the content and whether or not they want to take any of these steps or get prepared. It's just one of the benefits of being a patron. So the patrons will get this, and then quite a bit later, God willing, the general audience will get this. With that, I'm going to put in the bio, because why should you care what I have to say about any of this? And then we'll get into the main topic. I'll roll into a quick abbreviated bio and then into the main topic. First and foremost, I am a Christian. I don't apologize for that. God is number one in my life. I grew up hunting and fishing in the backwoods of the southeastern United States at a very early age. Some of my earliest memories are with firearms. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. By God's grace, He got me through that safely. After that, I served as an instructor, an urban warfare instructor and a desert warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. I also served with the LAPD, both full-time as a sworn police officer and some more specialized assignments, as well as serving in the U.S. Army, full-time and part-time National Guard. I've been a FBI firearms instructor, still am an FBI firearms instructor, have been for a lot of years, also NRA certified and some other 3-letter government agency certified. I've been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify. I've been the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. By God's grace, He got me through all that in one piece, not because I'm better, but because He chose to have grace and mercy on me. I've been a professional hunter and guide. Professionally hunted things like buffalo and elk. Not many people today can say they've done that, but I'm blessed to be able to say that I have. I've hunted everything from white-tailed deer on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast to gray squirrel on the East Coast to prairie dog on the West Coast, and elk and bear and wolf, and slain all manner of beast. A state rifle and pistol champion a few times over in a few different disciplines. Now those experiences, it's not because I'm bigger or badder. Certainly not bigger. In fact, I met one of the patrons in real life, and he said something to the effect of, "I thought you'd be bigger." Reminded me of that William Wallace movie, where he's like, "Oh yeah, if William Wallace were here, he'd shoot lightning bolts out of his rear end." Well, I'm not William Wallace, but I am the person that did all those things in the bio. But not because I'm bigger or badder. I don't think that I survived when many other young, good men did not. I give all the glory and all the credit to God, all the talents and experiences that He's given me and the things that He's let me live through. I hope to use them to glorify God and to help you today. So if I boast in anything, it's not in my strength, it's in that God had mercy on me and saved me because He had a purpose for me. And hopefully I can use those talent, skills, and abilities to serve you today. All right, let's get into this episode. Let's get into talking about 2024 elections. And let me be clear that I am not a prophet. I don't pretend to see the future. There are pretty clear penalties in the Bible and Torah for false prophets. And I don't pretend to know the future or see the future. It would be great if we just had the 2024 elections and they were fair and honest and everybody took it well. Both sides took it well, took it with a grain of salt and said it is what it is for the next 4 years, and everything was peaceable and wonderful. and unicorns and rainbows and fluffy kittens and whatever else, right? That would be great. I'm not doing this episode because I want things to, descend into chaos, but I'm doing it because I think it's possible. Another big caveat is this is not the episode to get you prepared for the end of the world as we know it. Again, I don't see the future. Everything could be fine. This could be the catalyst that is the death knells of the Republic. This could be the point where people in history look back and say that was the beginning of the end of the American empire, the American way of life, the 2024 elections. But I don't know that. Again, I don't see the future. If that is the case, you're going to need a lot more than what I talk about in this episode. This episode is intended to cover general preparedness issues that may revolve around the election, a short-term disruption in the typical, and if I can even use that term, the status quo Americana. Okay, of primary importance, spiritual health, well-being, and preparedness. As the spirit prospers, so will the soul, the mind, and the body prosper. That is number one. If we live, we live to the Lord. If we die, we die to the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's, right? If you survive the greatest of calamities and 100 gunfights and are, the number one post-apocalyptic warlord in a wasteland and you die and go to hell, you failed, right? You failed. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment, and the second like it is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I just want to put that out first, because without that, none of this other stuff makes any difference. Let's get into some of that other stuff. The number one, come out of her, my people. I read this morning. This is in Revelation chapter 18. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. And by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, let a matter be established. Very similar, 2 Corinthians. Therefore, come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. Get out of the filth and the debauchery that is our culture and society. And again, first and foremost, that's spiritually, right? You could be out in the country in the middle of nowhere and looking up horrible things on your phone, but come out spiritually. But also, there's a physical aspect to that. Where were there problems? Let's put this real practical. Let's put the practical smackdown on this for the elections. Where were there issues? Where were there issues in the elections of 2020? Where was there civil unrest in the summer of love? Where were there civil unrest and riots in the George Floyd in, do a case study for yourself. Do your own area study. Do you live in any of those areas? Now, maybe just to be practical and to be safe, double it. If that trickles out to surrounding areas that are about half the size, how you doing? How is your area? How is your AO, your area of operation? The place where you live, to put it in civilian vernacular. We don't need to use all the tactical terms, like you heard my background, but I don't need to, use all these tactical terms. Put it in practical terms for you. Where do you live? Do a quick study of brief, poignant history in the last decade. If things get twice as bad, how do you reckon where you live is going to fare? So consider, come out of her, my people. Consider literally moving. Do you like where you live anyway? Are you just there for other reasons? Is it time to go? And I can't answer that for you. I'm not telling you to go. I'm telling you, if you think maybe that's calling to you, then pray about it, because I don't know, but God knows. So That's my first point. Come out of from my people. Consider it. Consider it. I'm not telling you to do it. That's on you. That's between God and you. But consider it. The next one is going to be a principle. Walk softly and carry a big stick. I don't know who came up with this, or the first person to come up with it, but I know it from Theodore Roosevelt. Big stick diplomacy. Walk softly and carry a big stick. Meaning, you don't have to front. You don't have to, strut around like a turkey. But you should be able to defend yourself and those around you. Walk softly and carry a big stick. He meant that like as a nation. But I'm applying that to you as a sovereign individual person, as a man. Walk softly, carry a big stick. Don't go looking for trouble, but if trouble comes, you be ready to wallop it. You be ready to put a hurting on that trouble, right? Jesus, there was a time when he sent his disciples out with nothing, but when he was leaving this earth in bodily form, he said, "But now I say to you," well, I'll just read it. This is from Luke chapter 22. He said unto them, When I sent you without purse and scrip and shoes, lacked ye anything? They said, Nothing. Then he said unto them, But now, he that hath a purse, let him take it, and likewise his scrip. And he that hath no sword, let him sell his garment, and buy one. Walk softly, carry a big stick. That's my next big point for this. You could have all the cool stuff you want, somewhere in a bunker, whatever. If you don't have it on you and you need it to survive, it doesn't matter. You don't actually possess it. You may have like legal control over it, but if somebody's trying to kill you, you have the tools that you have on you. Right? You may legally possess them. Okay, so you die with a bunch of guns in your safe. Nobody, doesn't matter. Naked you came into this world, naked you're going out of it. You get into a violent altercation for your life, you get into a violent altercation to save somebody else's life, you have what you have. And what you have at home is really irrelevant to you at that point. So, walk softly and carry a big stick. Consider in modern common sense vernacular, your EDC, your everyday carry. Maybe have more in your pockets than a Bic pen, a credit card, and your smartphone. And I've done whole episodes on EDC. I don't want to turn this into that, but walk softly and carry a big stick. If you've been a little slack on that, and you've been a little lazy on that, now might be the time to tighten up on that. Literally tighten up your belt, put some more stuff on it, tighten it up, gird your loins, and be ready. Be prepared. Walk softly and carry a big stick. The next big one we're going to talk about, have a plan. Have a plan. What is your plan? If things do get a little sideways in your area, things get a little crazy, normal operations, day-to-day life cease, whatever that looks like. And again, I'm not a prophet. I don't know. But what's your plan? There's some commonality in disasters, right? There's some disaster things that generally happen when things get bad. Are you ready? Have a plan, right? If roadways get shut down, what's your plan? If you get stuck at work and your family's stuck at home, or vice versa, what's your plan? If you're at home and your kids are at school and things get sideways, what's your plan? If your entire area of your entire city, your entire area that you generally live in, where you work and go to school and go to, Walmart or Target or wherever you go to church, go to school, go to work, that whole area becomes untenable. What's your plan? And I'm going to leave, what's your actual plan? Like, if we were sitting to put this in suit and tie world, many of you guys live and work in cubicles and sadly have to wear a tie. I say that for me. I don't like wearing a tie. If you like wearing a tie, good job. Not this guy. But if that's your kind of thing to put it in these words, if you were giving a presentation to a boardroom in a board meeting in your 3-piece suit, and you had to give a plan, you had to do a PowerPoint or a presentation, bam, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. If this doesn't work out, we're going to do this. This is the projected length of time. This is the projected budget. This is our worst case scenario. You can do it in that terms. You can do it in, again, the military jargon if you want to. What's the enemy's most likely course of action? What's the enemy's most dangerous course of action? What's your timeline? What's your primary plan, your contingency plan, your emergency plan, right? All that stuff. And put that together for you. You don't have to use all the military terms unless you're a veteran or acquainted with the military jargon. You don't have to, though. But just common sense. Like, what's your plan? Considering common things that happen in disasters. Roads get shut down. Do you have a plan to leave if the road is shut down? Do you have a plan to leave if only the highway is shut down? Do you have, several different routes? It's hard for me to not get into the military terms, but do you have several different routes planned out? What about a stay-in plan? What if, because we're talking about preparedness, right? What if things are bad where you are, but if you leave, you're way more likely to die than if you stay? You should have a plan for both, because have a plan for if you stay. Right? What is your, it's commonly called a bug in or a bug out plan. What are your plans for both of those things? You should have a plan. All the cool stuff is secondary to having a plan, because you're not going to know what stuff is practical if you have no plan. Right? This is not just primarily a buy and click on Amazon and I'm good. Ooh, I've got a case of MREs. I'm good. Are you? If it's not in your plan and you have to leave in a hurry and you leave your case of MREs in the closet and you're in your car, you have whatever food's in your car. So a plan is of more importance than the stuff. And Americans, I think, have largely turned into Amazonians, meaning we think we can solve every problem with the click of a button, with the click of a mouse and putting it in our shopping cart and buying it. Oh, and we spent some money and we feel good and we get a little endorphin rush. And oh, yay, capitalism, and now I'm good. But you're not good. You just have stuff. That is not even primary or secondary. It's maybe tertiary in importance. So have a plan. If you plan that you might have to leave, you better have like a checklist or something, or some kind of thing where that stuff, you're going to remember it. Because when you're panicking and you just got a frantic call from one of your kids, or you saw that, the roads are being shut down and literally Molotov cocktails are being thrown, that may not be the time you're going to remember everything. So again, have a plan. Now I'm going to get into some more specific things. Okay. Get training. Whatever training you think you need. If you have no emergency medical training, get training. Now, I'm putting this out to the patrons first, but hopefully by the time you guys get it, you'll still have time, right? The world won't be as crazy. Can you get medical training? If you don't have basic Red Cross, start with basic Red Cross, right? Yeah, you may get shot, or somebody else may get shot, and you may need to know how to fix a sucking chest wound. But also, you may see a kid choke on a piece of candy, right? You may just see a really bad car accident. You may have to know what a C-spine is. You may have to know when to move and when not to move a casualty. Or something as simple as the recovery position, right? Just medical training. If you don't have basic Red Cross, I'm not saying I love everything the Red Cross does, but that's kind of the standard. Get something like it, right? Get some kind of basic emergency medical stuff. I'm not saying to stop there, but if you don't have that, at least start there. Don't be worried about I'm going to throw on a sucking chest wound while I'm parachuting out of a back of a C-130 with my Cry-JPC plate carrier multicam, and you can't give a baby the Heimlich maneuver. Like, you got start where it's practical. Right, basic first aid. I'm not talking about like putting on a Band-Aid. I'm talking about like more serious than that. And the basic Red Cross will do that. And again, I don't love everything the Red Cross does, and I'm not hip on a lot of their financial stuff, but it's the standard, right? Do you know how to do CPR? Do you know how to put somebody in the recovery position? Do you know the signs of hypothermia? Just plain vanilla basic medical stuff. And then if you want to take like TCCC, of which I've had, that's a good place to go. But probably don't take TCCC if you don't have the other basic stuff. Because it would be pretty horrible to know how to fix a sucking chest wound, but then you see a baby choke in front of a piece of candy in front of you and die, right? So practical, and then go to the more tactical later. Both, I'm not saying one is more important than the other, but start where it's logical. But get some training there. And the next one, get some firearms training. And I do a whole other podcast called Gunfighter Life. I plan for this to come out on Alpha Male Podcast. But I'm not going to tell you got to get this exact make and model, and that other model is so last year, and if you have a revolver, you're just straight up wrong. And if your pants aren't black multicam, you're just going to get shot in the first 5 seconds. And if you don't have this high-powered optic on your rifle, you may as well just shoot yourself in the foot on the way to the range because you're just failing. Like, I don't care as much about that stuff. I'm not saying that kind of gear is not important, but I'm starting here because training is more important. Like, you could have the greatest rifle and the greatest long-range setup, and if you don't have the training to know to return your scope to 0 after the last time you've shot, I mean, it's just basic stuff. And take a basic course, and what's most likely to save you. And to me, for most people in the modern world, that's primarily handgun. Because a handgun is it's not even the best gun for defense. It's not the best gun for home defense. Handgun's not the best gun for many things. It is useful because it's generally the gun that we have on us most of the time if you're a man that carries a gun. And generally, if you have it, you're going to have what's on you. We talked about that already. And that's generally going to be a handgun. So start where it's practical. Doesn't make sense to have a whole lot of long-range, high-powered rifle training. It's great if you can ring steel at 1,000 meters, but you can't stop the meth addict from stabbing you with a screwdriver at the 7-Eleven parking lot. That's probably a lot more likely than you having to shoot somebody 1,000 yards. So be practical about it. Get training. Get training. And I'm not even doing training right now personally for profit. So just pick somebody, right? Pick a school, pick somebody close to you, do your own research, and get somebody with actual real-world first-hand experience. Right? If you're trying to get experience to survive a gunfight, maybe don't pick somebody that has none of that kind of experience. But get somebody with relevant experience and qualifications. Do some vetting, not just somebody that you know. Get some actual professional training. Get some kind of firearm training. You just having a gun is checking a box. Again, don't be an Amazonian. Don't just be like, oh, I have a gun, and it's a really good new Gucci gun. It came out this year. All the guys on YouTube University say it's the best. Have you actually had any training with it? Because you're probably better off with a old beat up police trade-in handgun that you actually went and took a class with and ran a case of ammo through than the next Gucci Glock that came out that you just got and put in a bag or put in a really cool holster that you don't train with. Get training. Get training. Get medical training. Get firearms training. And whatever other training you feel is germane to you. But get training while you can before things start to get crazy for the election. If they do get crazy for the election. And if they don't, you're just more prepared in general. If you took a good defensive firearms class and you stay on your skills, even if things don't get crazy, right? That's just a good thing. If you get really good medical training and things don't get crazy for the election and you one day have to throw a tourniquet on a dude, where's the downside in that? Next thing we're going to get into is, a big one is water. We talked about that commonality. One common thing in many, not all, but many disasters, many different natural disasters, all kinds of things. Even if the disaster itself is pretty bad, a lot of times what can be worse is dirty water. Dirty water kills a lot of people around the world. So clean water. And clean water doesn't have to be hard. I would say start with getting a case of water for both vehicles. Put it in the trunk, put it in the back of the truck, and unless you have to, obviously, if something bad happens before that, you dig into it. But if you just get a case of water and you're constantly drinking it, it's very likely that something bad's going to happen when you have 2 bottles of water left. So if that's the case, if you generally drink out of cases of water in your car, get an extra and rotate through it. But have the one you normally drink out of, and before you crack the seal on the next one, get another one. So you have a reserve case of water in your trunk, in your wife's trunk, whatever vehicles you have, unless it's just like a vehicle you almost never drive. Have a case of water in there, right? How practical and simple is that? And you don't even have to spend a bunch of money. If you don't want to do that, just save your pretty robust, not like a milk jug, but like a a pretty robust container. Old 2-liter bottles or something are great. If you don't want to spend the money to get a case of water, just get a couple of 2 liters or something. You don't have to get some kind of cool survival container. A 2-liter that had some kind of obesity drink in there, soda, whatever. Clean it out, fill it with water, throw it in the vehicle. Something pretty robust. And then let's talk about your home, because you should have a plan for both. Now, if you're stuck at home, likely your vehicles are probably going to be at home, but have some water in your house. I would advise you not to get cases of water for your house. I would advise you to get something else, because if you got a case of water in your house, if it's convenient, you're probably going to dig into it. And then when something bad happens, you're probably going to be short. So I would say do something else. Again, go back to those 2-liter bottles or some kind of container like that. 2-liter like soda bottles are pretty robust because the contents are acidic and under pressure. So they'll last a minute. And use common sense, right? If you live in a really cold environment where stuff freezes all the time, take that into account. But those things are pretty robust. Just start filling them and putting them under a closet. If you don't have a closet, if you have like a space under your house, just put them under your house. What's the downside there? Really? Have clean water. A real thing, and I didn't start with like stuff you can buy on Amazon, but stuff you can buy somewhere. There are these bladders that you can put in a bathtub if you have a bathtub and fill them with water. And that holds a lot of water. And you might think, I'll just fill my bathtub up, but then stuff can get in the water in the bathtub, or you may have to do it when your bathtub is gross, or your bathtub seal may have a really slow leak, which you don't notice if you're taking a 30-minute bath, but if you're trying to store the water for 2 weeks, it may just leak out and be gone. They make these bladders that go in your bathtub. They're not crazy expensive, but maybe having one of those. And if you don't know, if you live in a city, in a people hive, in the suburbs, a lot of times if you're on grid water, what will happen, even if the power goes out for a short period of time, there'll be water left in the tank, whatever, reservoir tank, that those big water towers, and that will give you some kind of water pressure for a short time. That's kind of how that works. So they don't have to continuously pump water. They pump it up into those big water towers, and that gives you water pressure. But when that's out, if there's no power, it's not going to refill, as far as I'm aware. So you have a little bit of time to get water. So if things start to get crazy, just fill that up. You don't have to keep it full all the time in your bathtub, but if things start to get a little hairy, fill it up. That's a lot of water. And again, we're not talking about, the end of the world as we know it. And I'm not saying that's all you need for that. I'm saying, a short duration interruption in like classic American life, if there even is such a thing anymore. But you get the idea of what I'm talking about. And, if it holds, 20, 30 gallons of water, that's pretty good. It's one of those things that doesn't have to cost you a lot of money, just water storage in general, but it'll literally kill you if you don't have any. Right? You need water. You need good, clean, drinkable water. You may also look at simple ways to purify water, especially if you're talking about a mobile plan, but the simplest way is just have clean water. Boiling water should be like a tertiary, not even a secondary plan. It should be like your third line, because it takes time. If you ever lived out in the bush, and if you don't know, I live as kind of a neo-nomad and live semi-off-grid or completely off-grid, and boiling water to clean it takes a lot of time and energy, right? It takes a lot of time to boil the water itself. It takes time to gather the wood for fuel. It's just labor intensive. If you're already making a fire anyway to stay warm, you're going to boil some water, no big deal. But just to gather enough fuel to boil water, that's a pain in the butt. And I wouldn't consider that if you've got other stuff going on. It should not be your primary or secondary way that you're going to purify water. But a simple way to purify water, just a simple water filter, something like a Berkey, or if you want a mobile one of the many mobile water filters. There's things like that you can get at Walmart. I'm not a biggest fan of the Life Straw. If you have one, that's fine. I'm more of a fan of the Sawyer Mini. I've used both. I just like the Sawyer Mini better, and I've covered that in other episodes. But something like that for water on the go, if you need to purify water, because again, dirty water kills a lot of people. Now let's go to food. I'm not telling you to eat this stuff because I don't consider it proper human diet most of the time. But in a survival situation, in a situation where you can't get food, where you're out of food, and you need calories, again, I'm not saying to live off this stuff all the time, but what I'm saying is get something practical that stores that you're going to eat We talked about like a case of water in each car. How about a case of ramen noodles, right? What does a case of ramen noodles cost? Very, very little. It's not great nutrition, but it's nutrition. There was a story about a girl that lived, I think it was a girl, that lived for several years somewhere in Europe eating just ramen noodles. And we're not talking about years, right? We're talking about a short-term disruption. The time when everybody's freaking out, rushing to Walmart because they realize things are getting bad and they don't have food, that's not the time to go to Walmart. That's maybe a really bad time to go to the store. So you should already have the stuff. Just a case of ramen noodles in each car. So if you got 2 cars, that's 2 cases of ramen noodles. And if something happens again, you got to leave in a hurry and you forget to grab your case of MREs in the closet, you have a case of ramen noodles in the car. And you've got water. You don't actually have to cook ramen noodles. I hope you guys know that. You can, if you're hardcore, just take the seasoning packet, dump it on there, and just eat it crunchy. Or you can take one of your water bottles, cut the top off, break up the noodles, shove them in there, and just let it sit. If you let it sit long enough, it'll get soft and you can eat it. We're talking about just, basic survival rations here. A case of ramen noodles, they're easy, they're cheap, and you can do other stuff too. I'm saying this if you don't have this, the basics. Another one is Pop-Tarts, right? Who doesn't like Pop-Tarts? I don't generally eat them because I don't consider them proper human food, but in an emergency, let's say you're actually in the act of driving, trying to get out, and you're really hungry, or kids are really hungry. I mean, whatever, Pop-Tarts, and if not Pop-Tarts, something like it. Just the off-brand of Pop-Tarts, right? Have a couple of boxes of Pop-Tarts in there with the ramen noodles. Just basic survival calories. I'm not saying it's great food. I'm not saying you should eat it all the time. I'm not saying it's the best. Or if you want to put a case of MREs in both vehicles, do that. But that's a lot more expensive. But case of ramen noodles, case of Pop-Tarts. If you forget it 2 years later, okay, you're out $20. I mean, it's cheap insurance, cheap food insurance. Get a case of that, a couple of boxes of Pop-Tarts for each vehicle. And then the same thing for your house, right? If you got room, get a couple of cases of ramen noodles. Again, what does a case of ramen noodles cost? I know inflation is crazy, but a couple of cases of ramen noodles, and maybe for your house, a couple of cans of tuna. A little bit of extra protein. You can throw a little bit of, and it can be tuna, it can be, canned chicken, something like that. So you can throw some protein, some kind of meat in the ramen noodles. Not going to be great, but you'll be thankful you have it if you need it. And you don't have to do that, but you can do something like it, right? Get cans of chili. Get a container of protein powder if you want and store it in there. Especially if you eat protein powder anyway, you just rotate through it. Buy an extra one, and you finish one before you dig into the fresh one, replace it, so you always have one sealed protein, thing on hand. We're not talking about long term. That will be its own episode, right? But short term stuff, you got a couple of. So if you got one in each car, you got 2 cars and a couple of cases at home. That's several cases of ramen noodles, boxes of Pop-Tarts, some protein. It won't be great, but you'll get through it. You probably will be less likely to make a stupid decision like, let me run to Walmart when there's mobs of people and civil unrest. So just simple preparedness stuff that applies to the election. And another one I'm going to talk about, not as essential as food and water, but pretty essential in today's modern society. Gas. We have a standing SOP in our house that we don't let our vehicles get below half a tank. If they're below half a tank, before we go home, when we pass a gas station or whatever, we get gas. Half a tank. I would consider that in normal life just a good solid practice. Don't be driving around on 1/8 of a tank or 1/4 of a tank, or wait till the gas light comes on. I wouldn't advise that anyway. What I would advise if you start hearing anything like civil unresty coming up in the news and the media, maybe bump that to keeping it to 3/4 of a tank, right? It may be a little annoying, but every time you get below 3/4, every time you drop down a little bit, just fill it up. And you don't have to go crazy with this, but a spare gas container, you should probably have that in your car anyway. And not just for you. If you keep your tank above half, you're probably good on that. But what about other people? What about just normal times? Forget about, elections are leading to, what's that movie, The Purge? The Purge 2024. I think they even did like a Purge election year. But that's not even happening, right? Let's just say that some lady with her kids breaks down on the side of the road because she just had a lot on her mind and forgot to get gas. You can be the man that helps her out with gas. Put a gallon of gas in her car, right? Just for normal things. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. But if something bad does happen, you have that extra gas. And have that extra container of gas, and then, whatever it is, every month, you can do this one of two ways. Like every month, you just dump that gas in the car and refill that. That way you don't have really old gas, because gas doesn't last very long. But that way you got fresh gas in the container. It's an easy way to do it. If you don't think you're actually going to do that, if you know yourself and you're not actually going to do that, get some fuel stabilizer like Sta-Bil or some other brand and put some of that in your gas can in the car. And that lasts like a year, maybe even more. And if you mix it with other gas, it's probably going to be okay. So, but in general, keep your gas above half a tank. And if things start to seem a little out of the ordinary, keep it at 3/4 of a tank or better, and have a spare container. Now, you can do more than that, but that's pretty common sense stuff. If things get bad, there may be a rush on gas stations. There may not be gas. When everybody's panicking about gas, filling, what was that? It was not that long ago, people were like filling trash bags up with gas and filling like water bottles up with gas and stuff. Don't be that person, right? When everybody else is freaking out about it, you're just not, because you already have it. So just real simple, basic stuff on gas. If you want to have more than that, like if you have a garage at home and you want to have a couple extra containers of gas, that's fine. But that's probably good for most things if we're talking about, again, not the end of the world as we know it, but a short-term disruption and normalcy for Americans. The next one, the bug-out bag. And I'm not going to rehash everything that should be in a bug-out bag. I've done whole episodes on that. If you want that, whether you want like a baby bug-out bag, or a really big bug-out bag, you should have the bug-out bag. I assume if you listen to this, you already have a bug-out bag. If not, then make a bug-out bag. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to set you back $10,000. A lot of the stuff you probably already have laying around, just consolidate it in a bag. Because, when people are running around like chickens with their heads cut off, and, there's mass chaos in the streets, that's probably not the time to consolidate stuff into a bag. You're probably going to make better decisions as to what should be in the bag beforehand. So have your bug-out bag. Assume that at some point it's going to have to be man-portable. So I prefer something like a backpack with straps, like with shoulder straps. Unless you're talking about like a baby bag concept, a baby bug-out bag. Not only have I done whole episodes on that, there's some of the few YouTube videos I have. If you go to I don't generally plug this because I don't want to really promote YouTube. Some things are just better in video content. So I did 2 videos. Good Shepherd Training is my channel. I've done an entire episode on the big bug-out bags called the Mobob, mother of all bug-out bags, and the baby bug-out bag concept. So if you want to see what I have in mind, that's fine. But you don't have to. Like, they're just common sense stuff that goes in your bug-out bag. But the main thing I wanted to talk about for a bug-out bag is talking about pre-election stuff. Have it in your vehicle, right? If things get crazy pretty quick, and you're like, things are getting a little crazy, but I still have to go to work to feed my family, and you're at work and things get crazy, you have what you have on you, right? So the bug-out bag that's super awesome in Cryptex camo pattern and has all the Gucci high-speed stuff, that's at home, and you're 50 miles from there or 30 miles from there, you might as well not even have it. Because all that stuff is useless to you until you get to it. The whole point of the bug-out bag is to get to where you need to go. So have it with you. Talking about having a case of ramen noodles in your vehicle. Talking about leading up. You should do this anyway. I encourage you to keep a bag in your vehicle anyway. But if you hitherto have not been doing that, keep your bug-out bag in your vehicle. You want some urban camo, throw an old jacket over it. Throw an old blue tarp from Harbor Freight over it. But consider keeping your bug-out bag in your vehicle. If somebody breaks in and steals it, get another bug-out bag. If something really bad happens and you need the bug-out bag, it's not going to do you any good at home. So pre-election prep, consider keeping the bug-out bag in your vehicle. That's some common sense pre-election stuff. Have the bug-out bag, your emergency bag, whatever you want to call it. I'm never coming home bag. Have it in your vehicle. The next one, again, Gunfighter Life is a whole other podcast, but I have a whole series. It's one of the most popular topics. I've done an entire series on truck guns. Now, this should not take the place of your EDC, your everyday carry. If you get in a violent altercation, you're going to have whatever gun you have on you. It's very unlikely that if you don't have a gun on you, you're going to have the time to run to a vehicle and get your gun. But in one of these kind of scenarios where again, roads may be shut down. I would assume that they are. And if not, then that's a good thing. But if the highways are shut down, you get stuck in traffic, and it's just gridlock traffic, and you got to get home, you got what you got. So consider a truck gun. And I've done whole episodes on I've done a whole series what's a better or what's good for a truck gun. The AR-15 carbine, the AK-47, the pistol caliber carbine. I've done a whole series on that. So go look that up if you want. But consider a truck gun. Consider a more legit truck gun than you generally have on your person. Again, handguns are not great for many things. They're not great for hunting. They're not great for defense. They're not great for home defense. And you're talking to somebody that is a several-time state pistol champion. You have them because you have them on you. If you can have a long gun, have a long gun. So this makes sense to have a truck gun in your vehicle. So consider that leading up to the elections. Again, if somebody breaks in and steals it, that's on them. That's not your fault. I'm not telling you to leave it unlocked at a preschool, but what I'm saying is if somebody breaks into your car and steals your vehicle, it is what it is. Get another gun. If something really bad happens, you need a gun. It's not going to do you any good locked in a safe at home if that's not where you are. So, again, consider the truck gun concept, trunk gun if you have a car or whatever, and ramping that up and reevaluating that pre-election. And there's a lot more little stuff we could talk about, but those are some pretty big common sense things, I think, that are just attainable to the common man and common sense stuff to get ready for the elections. So, pre-election prep in 2024. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Your tactical tip of the day. I'm not saying you got to turn into some Neo Daniel Boone. You got to live off grid. You got to live as a nomad like my wife and I do. But even if you live in the biggest of cities, there's probably an edible plant in your area. Find one edible plant in your area. If you're even short term, that diet we talked about, it'd be really nice to have some fresh vegetable in there. I'm big on hunting and all that stuff, big on fishing and hunting and getting your calories that way, but for just a basic common sense beginner thing, find an edible plant in your area. And if you already know some, find one more. Find another edible plant in your area. That's my tactical tip for you for today. Be something as simple as dandelions. And not just, I know you can eat dandelions. I mean, actually do it, right? We talked about training. Actually go out, get some dandelions, wash them off. Decide what you like. Do you like the flowers? Do you like the leaves? You can say dandelions are edible, but if you know some leaves on dandelions are much more palatable than others, you'll know that if you eat them. Right? Just simple tip right there. Your tactical verse of the day, I'm going to go back to Revelation 18. Come out of her, my people. Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. With that, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.